I am really pleased to welcome back Rabbi Emily Losben-Ostrov. Her most important role is, of course, as a member of the advisory committee of La'asok, but secondarily, in all her spare time, she's also the rabbi of Temple Shalom in Scotch Plains, New York. Her congregants might put those in a slightly different order. So without any further ado, I'm just going to turn things right over to Rabbi Losben-Ostrov.
Thank you, Rabbi Streifer. I'll just say New Jersey because I don't want any of my fellow congregants or fellow New Jersey people to think that New York is taking over. So
Sorry, I
um,
actually knew that and I said the wrong word. I would never mix those up on purpose.
I'm just kidding. It is so great to see everybody, and so just excited to be here. And I really am honored to be on the advisory committee council, and just this is so special to me. So let me go right ahead, and we'll jump into our blessing for our study. I'm going to share my screen. And I love that people are using the chat, and it is so great to see people that I know either through our wonderful work that we've been doing together, other types of programs with La Asok, or even my own congregants, and yes, even my own mom is here. So you should be able to see my screen right now. Let me make that a little bit bigger. And so I mentioned to you, Rabbi Streifer, that I had put together a graphic. So this is what Canva helped me design when I asked for a graphic about today, which is rather interesting. So we'll get to the blessing in just a second, but I share this with you because one of the things I want us to think about in terms of talking about the psalm is what does it mean to be a shepherd? And so, what is the imagery that comes to mind when we think of shepherd? What is it when we think of God as our shepherd, or just in general? So, I thought that this rod or staff, which is represented in the psalm, would be an interesting picture to look at for a moment. So, here we go. Here is our blessing for Torah study, and I invite all of you to come off mute and to say it with me. So let us do this together. Baruch
Baruch
atah Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
Melech
melech
haolam,
haolam
asher
asher
kidshanu
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 b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav, tivanu
v'tzivanu la'asok
la'asok
b'divrei
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 Torah.
Torah.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah, and let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
So you can put yourself back on mute, and then whenever we call on each other, you'll be able to come off at that point. So with the, as Rabbi Schleifer mentioned, wanting just to think about your thoughts on this. So before we jump into looking at the text, because I think most of us, or many of us, are familiar with this psalm, I'd love it if anyone wants to share what comes to mind when you think of the 23rd Psalm. Any thoughts that resonate with you? Whether you want to put it in the chat or if you want to come off mute, you can raise your hand. Okay, so funerals. Oh, the scene from the Titanic. Oh, I'll have to rewatch that. Bob?
Many years ago, when my now 51-year-old son was in high school and was memorizing the psalm, I gave him some clues in terms of the way it goes from third person to second person to and really a personal, almost first person thing as it goes along. That's my thought.
I love it, love it. So it's very personal for you. I love that. Anybody else want to share anything before we dive into, please, Aviva and Yehuda?
This is probably the most well-known of the Christian um, parts of the Bible. And they've taken something of ours and really embraced it. Everybody knows it by heart in any church.
Isn't that incredible? And it's amazing how many of us know it by heart as well. Let's see, I'm seeing some more come in the chat. Most people know it. Anything else anybody wants to add to speak before we go take a look at the text? So, being protected and guided, a peaceful transition from life. God is with us always, no matter what. I love these things that people are mentioning, and that's part of the hope piece that we're definitely going to get into today with it being Tikva, our hope. Yes, Ms. Losben, aka my mom. Oh, I thought you came off mute. I'm sorry. It's okay.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. I'm off mute. Excuse me, so I put it in the chat instead. But most of the people have said the same thing. But it's the one I think that is probably the most interesting because so many people know it. So you can interpret a lot from it. And it's so peaceful to so many people because they know it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm going to pull up the text. I want people to continue to write in the chat. And again, if anyone has any thoughts to raise your hand. Um, are you still? My husband, as some of you know, is a cantorial soloist. So when we look at the Hebrew right now, I'm going to actually ask him to sing it for us. Rabbi Schreifer, I hope you're okay with that. And so I'm going to give me one moment. I'm going to put up the Hebrew of it, and that way we'll be able to hear the Hebrew, which I'm wondering if we should do the English first real quick, just so that let's do I'm hearing, oh, I love this. This is the most Jewish room already. We have one person saying yes and one person saying no. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the Hebrew because I think most of you have heard it in English, and I want to see what you think of both in hearing this melody as well as your own thoughts and feelings. So Bob, you win because I saw you shaking your head. So we're going to go with the Hebrew first. So you might do the Hebrew and the English. I will put up. Yes, I can put up. So here's the way I have it. If I put up the Hebrew and the English, it's not the transliteration. So are we okay with not seeing the transliteration? So we see the Hebrew and the English. Okay. All right. Fair enough. I'm going to do that as we hear the Hebrew, and then we will look into the English together. I love how wonderful we are at being a real community and sharing the opinions. So here it is with the Hebrew and the transliteration. And of course, I'll give anyone links for that later if you would like. But here is the Hebrew with the English. And now my husband, Ruben, will share it. Now, mind you, we are going to talk about the English. So this is the direct translation from Safaria. Okay, so we'll look at, and I have some different translations which we may even get time to look at. But right now, this is an opportunity for whatever the visceral reactions are, both to hearing it in Hebrew and to what you think of initially in seeing this text. So Ruben is going to sing this for us right now. And for those who haven't met my husband before, um, this is Ruben-Ostrov. I don't know, but just it's okay.
Adonai roi lo echsar benot esher yarbitzeini al mei menuchot yenehaleini nafshi yoshovev yancheini ומעגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומנשנתך המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשן טוב ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימי.
Thank you, Ruben. You're getting some kind reactions, sweetheart, to your singing. And that's just one of many different melodies. So that's one that Ruben recently, or not so recently, learned. And so when he officiates with me at a funeral, that's the version he'll sing. I'm blessed to work with a wonderful cantor, and she sings a different tune at funerals, and maybe you've heard other ones as well. Okay, so any initial thoughts further from what we've said? Anybody want to share based on either hearing it or your first look at reading it, and then we're going to read it together. So just looking, is there anybody want to say anything? Okay, Rabbi Schreifer, please.
Yeah, just that melody transports me to graveside. And when I read the words, I don't always think of a funeral, but when I hear that melody, I think of it as a moment of comforting mourners and also um, thinking about death.
Thank you. Bob, and then Alfred.
In that last phrase that begins with and that has a line that changes off the melody somehow, I love that word which I always think of as meaning but, or the base for the Jewish phrase aha.
I love it. I love it. Ah, beautiful. Okay. Alfred?
Yes. In contrast to the King James version, he leadeth me in, oh, excuse me, he leadeth me beside the still waters. I love that the literal translation is he leads me to waters, which for a desert people would be phenomenal, to be led to water rather than just
Beautiful.
strolling along the side, say, of an English river. It's a path directly to what sustains life.
Beautiful. And interesting in places of repose to hear that, to see that translation. Aviva and Yehuda?
So it doesn't actually say anything about death specifically. And it's very beautiful how in a very Jewish tradition, we we don't talk about the afterlife because we hope, but we don't know. And I think that that's a very reassuring. This applies to in life as it would to in death equally. And it does not, that doesn't actually, though it is associated with, it doesn't actually say anything about death.
Beautiful. And it's the same thing with the mourner's Kaddish. We associate the mourner's Kaddish with death, but it doesn't say anything about it. In fact, I always make a point at funerals to say that when we're saying Kaddish, this is actually a prayer that allows us to praise God for all that was good in the person's life, or praise God that that person was in our life. So again, it has nothing to do with death, but we associate it. And it's really interesting. We've kind of shared this so far that the 23rd Psalm, immediately, I think of funerals. So I know Rabbi Schreifer said he's brought back to graveside, but for me, immediately, that's what I think of. And it's such a powerful, beautiful psalm. It would be great if we also used it for other purposes as well, and if we associate it. But because we know it, I also find that if I'm at a funeral and people don't have the words in front of them, and I ask them to say it, they're able to say it. But very often they say, what version? The Lord is my shepherd. Now, I will tell you, as a strong Reform Jew, I try very hard now not to use the word Lord because of its masculine references, but I am going to show you the classical text. And if it's okay, I'd like for us to actually read that. I have a bunch of different versions. We'll see what we get through today and sharing. And I know that some things might be a little bit small, so I will make it bigger if I have to. So please forgive me. But I want to also share with you that the text that we're going to look at now, I specifically took from our Machzor, or I should say the Reform Movement's High Holiday Prayer Book. And in the Yisker service for Yom Kippur, we actually have not one, not two, not three, but four versions of the English translation of this prayer. So one of them, though, is the more traditional that people are familiar with that refers to God in the masculine. And it's very interesting because I think so many of us are so used to hearing it that way that to do it another way sometimes separates us from what we think of, even if it's not exactly the theology we're working with. So if you'll all permit me to read through it with the traditional language that some of us are used to hearing, and then we can also look at the other translations. So again, any thoughts that come out, I'm going to read this as you see. I know it's small, but can people somewhat see the first version? Okay. Mike is giving me this sort of. I can see if I can. Let me escape for a second and see if I can make it just slightly bigger. 1 second. Oops, it brings me back here. I apologize. You're all still seeing my screen though? Let's try that to look at it that way. Okay, thumbs up, much better. Okay, here we go. If you'll join me, I'll read it out loud, and then if anyone wants to read any of the other versions, you can. But here's the traditional. And what I want to encourage you to focus on in hearing something you're familiar with is also take a look at some of the descriptors that you might not be as familiar with or not think of because we think of this all often in the whole as opposed to parsing it out. So, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So what stands out to you? What to me, just in reading this again, and if we disassociate it a little bit with death and we think about the words as they are, to me, this is the definition of tikva. This is the definition of hope. The idea of not being alone. Yvonne, let me call on you first.
Um, Reading it, yeah, and taking out the automatic feeling of where we listen to this in funerals and the sadness. I love the way now each time I read it of the metaphors and the visuals that we have here. We have visuals of the green pastures and of the waters and all these metaphors of the table. Um, and that together with also actions, right? He makes me lie and he leads me and he restores me and he guides me. So there's actions and there's visuals, and then all that combined with feelings, right? I fear feelings of fear. I won't fear evil and comfort. So I see a combination of so many things here when you look at it as a work. It's like a work of art, really. When it's like seeing a painting and looking at the different combinations. So the visuals and the physical actions and the feelings, I think, make a beautiful reading.
I love that. And I'm actually thinking now, I made this graphic, with Canva, but I would love to actually take it verse by verse and see what other imagery I get, what's the artwork. And I'm sure there are plenty of art paintings done on this psalm itself, but I'd love to be the one to do that too. Maybe that's another class we can do, Rabbi Streifer, where we actually kind of put it into an art form as well. Cheryl, Francine, and then my mom.
So I've always wondered about the line about preparing a table for me in the presence of my enemies. Like, why would I want to have a table in presence of my enemies? It seems like I'd be uncomfortable sitting that close to my enemies. And it's kind of an implication that God is going to be there protecting me and making it safe for me to be there. Otherwise, why else would God be putting me in that situation? But these days, when the enemies are so close to us so often, and there's so many different enemies that we have, and we don't even know who they are, it seems kind of a strange thing that I don't know that I want to be.
I hear you, Cheryl, and I've thought about that line a lot in preparation for our session today, because the way I want to read this is, God, make me so strong that I can sit before my enemies and be able to eat with them, to be able to break bread with them, to be able to still be human and to see them for their humanity. And I need to hear that, especially now with the world that we're living in, when kind of what you said is sometimes our enemies are actually the people we thought were our friends. In the world right now, with the anti-Semitism that we're experiencing, sometimes it's the people I thought I was closest to, or sometimes it is someone who actually is so far away from who I am. Just last week, I had the wonderful opportunity to be at an interfaith event where we were at a table, literally eating at a table with people of such different backgrounds, and they weren't my enemies. That's actually what was beautiful, was that what I thought could have been my enemy quickly became my friend. So maybe that's also part of it. I hope you can see, I know it's smaller print, but this is two other versions that are in the prayer book and the Machzor. And to your point, Cheryl, what's interesting is this, if you're looking up at the top three, and I know it's small, I can try to make it bigger, but for that line, instead of saying my enemies, it says, you have set a full table for me when I have been hurt and alienated. So it's a little bit of a stretch, you could argue, but it's also that thought. Francine. Oh no, we can't hear you. I know you're unmuted, but the sound isn't coming through. Um, no. Will you type it in for us? Can you do that? Or and then maybe while you're typing it in, if you want to check and see if there's anything with your microphone too. Okay, Mom.
Everybody's been saying basically what I've been feeling and what you said, but it just feels that there's I don't want to say eternal feeling in there, that there is something, that this is not the end, and that we have this presence within us. God is there to protect us and to give us a sense of peace. And so, yes, that's probably why whoever decided to use it at funerals years ago. And unfortunately, when I hear it, I visualize myself at Goldstein sitting there, and everybody knows, even they give you a handout. But it just seems to me the sense that everything is unique, is eternal, it's there, and that we shouldn't lose hope, as you mentioned.
I really appreciate the concept of hope and eternity and eternal being brought up there. I think that's again focusing for us on the idea of hope. And my hope is that in examining and exploring this together today, maybe we won't just associate it with funerals and we'll be able to think of what it means to have God guiding us, God as a shepherd. We use that language also at the high holidays. You might remember the antiphonal, God is my shepherd, we are your flock, and it goes back and forth. And so thinking of God as a shepherd, as a guide in that space. And then also what you were saying in terms of feeling God's presence with us at all times, not just in the sadness or not just if we want to look at it. I think it was you, Cheryl, who said about eternity afterwards. We don't know what happens. We might not know what happens after, or maybe it was you, Aviva, I'm sorry. We don't know what happens after life, but knowing that God is still with us wherever that might be, whether there is a world to come, but to know that God is with us in all phases. Francine, do you want to try again, see if that works? And then Michael? No, I'm sorry. I'll read your comment, Francine. Okay, great. Um, Let me see if you did you put it in there already, Francine? Okay, so let me just read that out. So Francine said, my input was, it is interesting we focus on the death aspect because the text is written mostly in present tense. There is some association to the past, such as you have set the table, but it still reads as the present. So I love that you put all of that in there. I hope I didn't cut that off as I'm trying to, but still reads as a presence, maybe alludes to God being with us always. Beautiful, Francine, and that's what I was hoping we would get to. Michael?
Yes. Yeah, so I thank you, Rabbi. I was wanted to comment in regard, I guess it was Cheryl, I think, who made the comment about the table and the enemies, which I thought was such an interesting comment. I'm wondering, I hadn't thought about that before, but I'm wondering, could the table of peace and could God's presence be so strong that it just is more notable than any uncomfortableness we might have with our enemies or had with our enemies. But could the table, the metaphor of the table and be just sitting and being present with one another at a table, and that God's presence and God's peace, um, that could it be to say that, God's peace can be so powerful that it will even make our enemies as no longer our enemies, or that we don't have to worry about our enemies because the enemies will be overcome by God's peace also, as we will, and it'll be a peaceful gathering at the table. Thank you.
I love that, Michael. So not only God making us strong enough, but God being able to cause others. What I love about our Tikvah Through Text sessions, it always seems like 30 minutes is 5 minutes, and it's hard to believe that we are actually out of time. If it's okay, I'd be happy to go a few more minutes. Okay, Rabbi Schaefer says yes. So let's take the other responses, and then I want to also share this other version down at the bottom, and I'll make that a little bit bigger. So please, Aviva or Jonah, Yehuda, sorry.
I associate this with it's sort of a story in our lives. Every year, we participate in an interfaith gathering right before Thanksgiving, and we'd usually choose a medley of songs. We use the same words, of course, but in Judaism, we use these same words to create many melodies, which is very different in some ways than others. And one year we chose this, not the same musical version that you did. The one it's got a ABC parts, and the woman who was singing with us probably had the finest voice in the community. And I'm probably exaggerating this, but she appeared to be 6'4". She was very tall, and her voice was pure. She was a trained operatic singer, but she did not use vibrato hardly at all. She just had the pure voice. And as we sang through this, we were up on the bima, and the place was full, and we got to the part where it goes la da 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 da, and she is doing this with her hand, and the whole audience started singing together. And it was magic. It was magic because they picked up the melody and they were so in tune with it. And I have always associated this with that.
Isn't it amazing how we have these experiences in the text and I love that you use the word magical and I hope and I believe that when we look at text and when we see it and we experience it, we can have a sense of magic. And so I'm so happy you had that, Yehuda. And I hope that we can all experience some kind of magic as we associate with this text. Alfred, I want to take your comment and then I want to leave us with a closing thought that I'm actually going to ask you. So, even though we've only been able to study this together for a half an hour, and as I was thinking about what to do with this, I think we could do a whole series, let alone an hour session just on this one psalm. I'd love if anyone wants to put in the chat if you have any different feelings or anything new that has come to you since we've looked at this, any other thoughts, anything, because we have had a chance to maybe look at something you know very well but look at it a little bit differently, or any thoughts of how you're going to take this with you going forward. So I'd love if you want to put that in the chat. Alfred, I'm going to take your comment and then I'm going to read aloud, if that's okay, one of these versions, which is just a little bit different than what we heard, the traditional as well as the literal, which we had up on the screen. So I love that we've been able to explore the text in a few different ways. So please, Alfred.
My recollection from being exposed to this is thinking back on my elementary school days when the head of school, Mrs. Chilton, would frequently read from this in assembly, in, of course, the King James Version, and how it set me up for a lifetime of confidence in the goodness of God. And I think as a child, this is very accessible language. And I also think that setting the table in the presence of enemies reflects the experience of the diaspora very strongly.
Wow. I almost want to just end on that, Alfred, because I feel like I don't know that I can say anything better than to think of the psalm leading us with confidence, because isn't that also what Tikvah, what hope is all about? That through our text we get to be the best that we can be, which means having that confidence. So I'm debating. I guess I'll do one more asking what you all think. Should we read one more version together? All right, I'm seeing a few head shaking. Okay, so I'm gonna choose to read the number 4, though I could easily choose number 3, and I'll just mention that what's interesting is number 3. I just want to read that first line. The Shekhinah, which we know is often called the feminine version of God or another name for God's presence, a sheltering presence makes me whole, which I love is a nice contradiction to if we are wanting, then we're not whole. So if we don't want, then we are whole. When we use the expression, I want for nothing. So making me whole. So here's the bottom one. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God gives me rest in green pastures, guides me by the restful waters, refreshes my soul, directs me along straight trails for the sake of God's name. Even when I pass through the valley of ominous shadows, I am not frightened, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff calm me. You provide for me even if there are enemies about. Your care exceeds all expectation. My cup overflows. Truly, a generous goodness will pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall be with God as long as I live. Friends, it has been wonderful as always to spend some time with you today. I want to thank you for giving me a few extra minutes as we have continued on. I know that we are going to officially end because we try to keep this to 30 minutes and want to let you get back to what you're doing. I'm just going to put my email in the chat for those of you who don't know me. If anybody wants to send me your thoughts or follow up on this, I would love to have it. And also would love to stay in touch and can't wait till Rabbi Streifer brings me in for the next thing. And I will be doing another Tikvah Through Text next month. So we're still figuring out what that session will be, but it could almost be a continuation of this, but I won't. We'll do a different text. Thank you, everyone. And Rabbi Streifer, anything else you want to add as we conclude? And then let me just have one more last word.
Sure. Quick note. First of all, I did the same thing last week where I said, let's finish this next week. No, 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 I'll do something different. But next week, I am teaching next week, and we're going to look at Psalm 121, which is the famous, I lift my eyes to the mountains, Esayinai el Heharim. And we'll think about how we can find hope in that psalm as well. And I just wanted to thank Rabbi Emily for this wonderful teaching, and I'll turn it back over to you for the last word.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to wish you all a wonderful day and pray that you go forth with hope and go forth with the words, these sacred words, knowing that you are not alone. Be well and an early Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.